We have credible sightings now in the United States, Canada, England, Hungary, Finland, Sweden, Guam, and Japan. Not to mention unconfirmed reports elsewhere. No sound, extreme maneuverability, high rate of climb, hypersonic velocity, no apparent means of propulsion, no heat signatures of any kind, and shaped like discs. Flying saucers.
While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.
Welcome, everyone, to Somewhere in the Live Stream. I am your host, Ryan Sprague, the host of the Somewhere in the Skies podcast. And a big hello to everyone on this wonderful Sunday evening. If you're joining us in the UK, it's about 8 o'clock p.m., 4 p.m. over on the East Coast in the US. And what would that make it? 12, 1, 2? Yeah, 12 p.m. on the West Coast. I don't math well, if you guys haven't figured this out by now. But welcome. This is a live stream we try to do every Sunday here on this channel, where we cover all the latest UFO news and just have UFO conversation with you, our live chat. And I see a bunch of our regulars tonight, guys. A big hello to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. And to all our new people, hello, welcome. Welcome to everyone over on Twitch, on Twitter. I think we're over on Patreon tonight as well. So welcome to all our Patreon subscribers. Big thank you to all of them, our YouTube members, and everything in between. Speaking of Patreon, guys, before we go any further, I did want to let you know that I'm actually dropping a Patreon exclusive episode. I'm going to be dropping it right here on YouTube for everyone to watch for free. This was like I mentioned, Patreon only and YouTube member only video that Suzanne and I did. Suzanne is in the chat tonight, guys, so be sure to give a big hello to her. Her and her husband are traveling right now, literally in the car right now, and she's still here moderating. So, man, cannot thank her and her incredible husband enough. But yeah, Suzanne and I did a fun watch-along video over on Patreon that we did. We watched my Phoenix Lights episode of the television series on the CW network called Mysteries Decoded. We just celebrated the 28th anniversary of the Phoenix Lights incident on March 13th. So we dropped it over there. We did a live stream on March 13th to celebrate that. But I'm going to be dropping it on Wednesday here on YouTube for all of you to watch. So you get a kind of sneak peek at what you can expect if you do join our Patreon page. We have so many bonus episodes over there, early access to the podcast. You get priority to ask our guests listener questions as well. So yeah, a lot of perks for helping out the show. So you can learn more at patreon.com/somewhereskies. Links are in the show notes as well for that. I am seeing some new names tonight. Yorkshire Puffin. That is the coolest name I have ever heard. Welcome. What else do I got for you guys before we start? Oh, super chat, super stickers are open. another quick, easy way, one-time donation way to help the show out as well. So you can do those super chats and super stickers anytime tonight. We greatly appreciate that. We will highlight your comments, answer your burning questions as well. So yeah, there's that. No more talking about money, but I am going to talk and beg you for likes and subscribes. That's right. Doing the YouTubey thing, guys. Like and subscribe, please. That helps us out tremendously as well. If you listen to this on the podcast, we do drop these live streams on the podcast feed as well every week. Please, please, please rate and review the podcast on Apple or Spotify, the two largest platforms out there. Would greatly appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Take my money, David says. I don't want to take it. I want to earn it. So I hope you enjoy the show tonight, Daylene. Good to see you here. Robert's here. James Craig is here. All work, low pay. Heck, let's shout it out. Fruit Fly's here. Donnie Falls. Biggie's Virtualicious Reality. That is a heck of a name. I love it. Hello from Sweden. Welcome, Biggie. I love it. Susan is here. Hello. Pat Gallagher. Susan Thomas. Kenzo is here. Henry. Wow. Michael Huntington is here. Hello. Space Today is here. Dalen, Lucy, Kurt, Open Minds Podcast. Hello, Johnstown Boy. Jeffrey Tomlin. Nisa is making the donuts as usual. Jacques Vallee is here. Tim is here as well. Thank you, guys. Thank you to everyone. If I didn't shout you out, I apologize. I'll try to get to a few more of those later tonight. But yeah, it's going to be a fun show, guys. I got some fun videos to share with you. Cool videos from some podcasts, from some interviews that have recently taken place, some news segments. Yeah, we're going to cover a little bit of everything tonight. And we are going to start with this guy. Who's that guy? That's Dan Farrell. Some of you may know Dan Farrell is the director of the new documentary that just premiered at South by Southwest Film Festival. The documentary is called The Age of Disclosure. The Age of Disclosure features interviews with 34 members of the U.S. government, military, and intelligence community, exploring claims of long-standing cover-ups surrounding alien life. Directed by Dan Farrell, The Age of Disclosure describes itself as an unprecedented and revelatory documentary that arrives on the heels of the historic bipartisan congressional hearings on UAP. So, this premiered. There hasn't been a lot of discussion in the UFO community yet about the content because no one's really seen it. Unless you were at South by Southwest and you got to go to the screening of this. Apparently there was like a huge line out the door. Like people were turned away for this thing. So I guess that's good. Good for these guys that you're seeing on your screen here. A bunch of these former intelligence officials, scientists, military people. They all got to go and take part in a Q&A after this thing. So there you go. Now, if anyone's interested in hearing some of the insider perspective of individuals who were there, I will recommend going over to Andy McGrillen's podcast, That UFO Podcast. He was able to interview a guy who actually went to the screening of this at South by Southwest and got his full review and breakdown of sort of what he experienced while there. And then Andy also had another listener of his podcast who emailed in and gave his thoughts. So yeah, head on over to That UFO Podcast, subscribe, listen to that episode if you want an insider's perspective of what went down at the film premiere of this. So from, as soon as this screening started, the reviews started coming out from like major outlets and whatnot. And they were very mixed to say the least. Some were praising it and said, this is going to change everything. And others said, you will not be swayed by this. You will not be convinced. Some people said it's 2 hours of just talking heads. So yeah, it's mixed to say the least. But what I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to play a clip where Dan Farrell, the director, a lot of people are wondering, who is this guy? why did he make this documentary? How did he get the access to all of these people that are in it? Lou Elizondo plays a big part as well in the doc. Chris Mellon. I think Lou Elizondo even narrates the entire thing. But they've got like they said, over 34 members of the U.S. government and military and intelligence community in this thing. So yeah, who knows when we're going to get to see it? There's been no word yet of any sort of distribution of this thing or where it'll be showing up, maybe on Amazon, maybe Netflix, Hulu, one of the bigger ones out there, or maybe like an HBO or Showtime sort of situation. We don't know. And we don't know a lot about our director, Dan Farrah. So I'm going to go ahead and play a clip for you guys here. This comes to us from Deadline, which is a website that covers all the latest Hollywood news about movies, directors, filmmakers, stuff like that. Yeah, he was interviewed by a journalist over there at Deadline about like why he made this documentary, sort of what it's about. So we get a closer look at Dan Farrah and a little bit more about the age of disclosure. Wow. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip for you guys, and we'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side. Enjoy.
To just start kind of broadly by asking where your interest in this topic came from and when you decided that you wanted to, explore it in a documentary format.
Awesome. Yeah, my interest in the topic really comes from movies. My childhood was in the 80s and early 90s, and I grew up watching movies like Close Encounters and E.T. and Fire in the Sky over and over and over, especially Close Encounters. That's hands down my favorite film. And, those movies piqued my curiosity in this topic and these big questions of whether we're alone in the universe, whether the U.S. government's actually more aware of information about this than they've shared with the public. So I feel like the interest that was piqued by those movies kind of fueled this lifelong interest in the topic and consuming any kind of like article or documentary or book about it. And ultimately, I decided I wanted to make the documentary that I wish existed. A really credible, serious, non-sensational documentary that sets the bar at only interviewing people who have direct knowledge of this topic as a result of working for the U.S. government in some capacity. Mm-hmm. And that was my motivation, and I was really just setting off to make the film that I wish as a viewer that I wish existed to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of a tall order though, to get that level of authority in a documentary like this. And yeah. I'm curious what the process of that was like to get all of these people to open up on camera.
Yeah, it was challenging. Early in my process, when I was doing research on the topic, I got introduced to several really high-level former intelligence officials who worked the topic for the U.S. government, and started forming relationships with them. Some of them were kind of like my go-to support for help getting other doors opened and helping socialize what I was trying to do. And one introduction led to another. Ultimately, I think a lot of the people I interviewed participated because I had put together a safe environment where they were surrounded by many other very credible, high-level active officials or former officials, and there was strength in numbers. So I wasn't asking any one person to kind of go out on a limb and be out there on their own talking about this stuff. Other thing that is really important to touch on is a lot of the people I interviewed have knowledge that they can't legally talk about, right? And I never asked them to do that, and I would never ask them to do that. But there's this whole other category of knowledge they have on this topic that they can lawfully, legally disclose, and they just historically been discouraged from doing so. So what I was asking them to do was to comfortably disclose what they legally could in the context of this documentary, where they'd be arm in arm with other credible people. And so, a lot of people obviously ultimately wrapped their head around doing that and decided to do it. Some people ultimately decided that they were worried about the stigma around the topic, or they thought that they would be in danger by participating. So I ended up interviewing and including in the film, 34 high-level military government intelligence officials, but there were a number of people who ultimately chose not to participate as well.
As you were going through and doing these interviews and collecting all of this information? I'm sure there might be several answers to this question, but what struck you the most, or what piece of information kind of like struck you by surprise a little bit?
I would say that the thing that surprises me the most is once I realized that once I learned from my interview subjects that there is a there, that this is a very real situation, a serious situation. And once I learned from the interview subjects how truly bipartisan it is also within our government, like senior officials from both political parties are taking this extremely seriously. It's to my knowledge, it's the only thing the leadership of both parties actually agree on, right? So what was surprising to me is that despite it being so serious and real, and despite it being so bipartisan, the average person has no idea about any of it. You know, like the public is very much in the dark on this, and that to me is the most surprising thing.
I just want to end by asking, why is this disclosure so important to you, and why do you think that it's something that the American public should know about?
I think that there's people it's not just the American public. I think people all over the world have been interested in this topic for a long time. And there's a lot of people like me who grew up super curious about, what the truth is on this stuff. And I think that, what the interview subjects in my documentary reveal is that there's a lot of information on this topic that affects us all. And so I feel like the public has a right to know basic information. Obviously, a lot of things still should be kept secret for good reason, for national security. But base facts, like we're not alone in the universe, it's one of the biggest questions in the history of humanity. If the answer is definitively yes, like we should all know that.
Yeah, I do agree with that. We should all know that. What I don't agree with is the term "there's a there." Lucy Kaplan, you are right. Am I the only one who hates the phrase "there's a there"? No, you're not. I absolutely have so much disdain for that term. It's just, it was overused, and that happens in the UFO community. These buzzwords show up, and everyone starts using it in every way they could possibly think of in the lexicon. Right now, psionics is the big one. I'm literally using it in the title of an upcoming episode. So I'm just as guilty sometimes, but yeah. So there you go, guys. Like, a lot of us were kind of curious who this Dan Farrell was. We knew he was sort of a bigwig in the Hollywood world, having worked with Steven Spielberg as well. He mentioned Close Encounters is like his all-time favorite movie. So there you go. There's definitely a connection with Spielberg to be made with Mr. Farrell. So you do have to wonder. Steven Spielberg has an upcoming movie coming out. Allegedly, we did report on this, but we don't know if it's 100% accurate yet. Allegedly, the film is going to be titled Disclosure. Hint, hint. The age of disclosure. I don't know. But is this sort of teeing us up for Spielberg's movie? Which is going to be a fictionalized version of UFO events. I'm assuming something to do with the current UFO narrative, as it were. Maybe. Who knows? When the CW network was coming out with their reboot of the old Roswell TV show from the 90s, the fictional one with the alien, they assume alien identities after they crash in Roswell, and one of them falls in love with a human woman. It was one of those CW dramas in their early days. They did a reboot back in the mid 2000s, and they hired me to come and give a lecture for Steven Spielberg's production company, Amblin Entertainment, who actually produced the Roswell reboot. And I gave an hour-long lecture on the Roswell UFO incident to like all of these Hollywood people. It was insane, surreal. But they really enjoyed it. They really dug it. The whole cast of the show was there, and they came and said how much they learned from me, that they would infuse into their knowledge and future filming of the show and stuff. So it was a great time. But maybe that's what we're seeing here. Like, this Dan Farrell guy made the documentary, works with Spielberg, and he's kind of getting us prepped for whatever the Spielberg movie could turn out to be. Or they're not connected at all, and I'm completely making that up. I don't know. Michael Huntington says marketing. Yeah, Yeah, for sure. And I mean, again, like, look at this. You've got Carl Nell, Hell Put Off, Tim Galladay, Gary Nolan, and then I'm forgetting the CIA spook on the end there. I forget his name. But it's interesting. It's interesting to see who's in this movie. From what I'm told, they've all said some pretty audacious things in the documentary, pretty definitive, sensational claims. So we'll see. Once the public really gets their hands on this documentary, then the true, sort of response to it will come out. But the reviews have been mixed, so I don't know. Um, Nobody was given early access to it that I know of, other than like major news outlets, or like entertainment news outlets. But nobody, like podcasters, like Andy and I, never got an early screening of this thing or anything like that. Not to say we're owed that in any way, shape, or form. We never expect that sort of thing, but they will often do that for whatever YouTubers, podcasters, to get the word out and stuff. But maybe they will reach out to us once this thing starts streaming or something, but I'll give it a watch. Why not? Right? We'll see. We'll see. But that's it. That's it for the Age of Disclosure. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you going to see it? I did put a poll up here on YouTube, so be sure to take part in that poll, and we will read the results at the end of the show if I remember. I always seem to forget. But yeah, let me know. Let me know if you guys are going to see the Age of Disclosure. And to piggyback off of this story, Farrah mentioned Spielberg, Close Encounters. That's where our next story is going. And this is about Spielberg, his new movie. They've started filming in New Jersey, of all places. Crazy stuff, right? Here's your cast, guys, for the upcoming Spielberg movie, which is being termed a UFO event film, whatever that means. Steven Spielberg's UFO movie begins filming in New Jersey. The movie will star Emily Blunt, Josh O'Connor, Coleman Domingo, Colin Firth, and Eve Hewson. That is a stellar cast. That's like, you couldn't ask for a better cast. You've got Oscar winners in here, Oscar nominees. My God, Josh O'Connor, his role in The Crown was just incredible. Coleman Domingo is fantastic. Obviously, Colin Firth, Emily Blunt. I don't know much, admittedly, about Eve Hewson. I believe she's Irish. So we'll see what she brings to the table as well in whatever this film turns out to be. But yeah, word is they started filming in New Jersey already. So the local news there in New Jersey is starting to talk about it and promote that, hey, Spielberg's in town filming a movie. How cool is that in our town, in our city? So I'm going to go ahead and play a local news segment here, guys. Jersey Shore, I believe, is where they're filming. So yeah, give this a watch, and we'll talk a little bit more about Spielberg's movie after that.
It's the set of a major UFO film, giving people in tiny Tuckahoe an experience that's, well, a bit out of this world.
It's an excitement for this area, for this town, to have somebody special like him here.
Hopes for a close encounter of the Spielberg kind as filming gets underway along local railroad tracks.
We live right around the corner, so we come and watch everything and see and maybe meet Mr. Spielberg. That would be wonderful.
The legendary director said to be in there somewhere.
Steven's one of my favorite. To me, he's kind of like the GOAT of directors, and I really want to get my eyes on Colin Firth.
After shooting in North Jersey for the past couple weeks, the UFO flick now focusing on scenes in Cape May County. What might be touching down here, stirring up plenty of intrigue.
We've seen things in Tuckahoe that you've never seen before, so it could happen in real life.
More and more productions are landing in the Garden State, which offers a significant tax incentive and an additional bonus for meeting certain diversity criteria. The New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission is aggressively pitching the state to studios and networks.
I believe that within the next 3-4 years, we'll be the #3 domestic spot for filming TV and your film projects, and that'll be right behind New York and Los Angeles.
Part of the sell is New Jersey's vast array of landscapes, small towns, cities, beaches, mountains, all within a state that's geographically compact.
New Jersey is definitely grabbing a bigger slice of the pie, that's for sure.
I walk down the street, see what's going on. Maybe make a cameo.
Lights, cameras, and a big crew giving small towns a taste of Steven Spielberg movie magic. Ted Greenberg, NBC 10 News.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Maybe I'll just go and walk down the street, make a cameo in a Spielberg movie. I don't know. I only got an hour on my lunch break, but we'll see. These people all need to be in this movie. They were all such characters. I loved that woman who was like, oh, maybe, we'll get to meet Mr. Spielberg. So endearing. And that other woman thirsting for Colin Firth. Anyone catch that? Yeah, I know you did. Don't laugh, gentlemen. I know a few of you have a little bit of a crush on Miss Emily Blunt there as well. So yeah, keep your mouth shut there. Lucy says, gonna need a Snooki cameo in there. Is that right? She should be in there. Did you know she's actually a huge UFO nerd? Snooki is. She listens to Somewhere in the Skies. She actually reached out to me on Instagram and told me that she was a big fan of the podcast. And she even posted on her Instagram story once, she does like morning runs or walks or something. And she posted a Instagram story of her listening to my show. So crazy, surreal world. She'll have to make a cameo in that for sure. That'd be awesome. Michael Huntington, this is an interesting comment. A Paintsville type incident. Yeah, Michael. We talked about that, I think, last week. Someone asked me about the Paintsville incident, and it was actually a case I covered on a very early episode of the podcast about a UFO that collided with the train. So who knows? Maybe that will have something to do with the movie. A Paintsville-like scenario. We shall see. Interesting nonetheless. I want to give a shout out to Angel Vega for the $4.99 super chat. Been listening to the podcast for about a year. Finally caught alive. Glad to see you. Angel, thank you so much. Thank you very much for your support and for being here. I'm so happy you found the podcast and that you stuck with us. Be on the lookout for a 400th episode airing in just under 12 hours or so. We're going to be releasing our 400th episode. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the stream. And to James Craig for the $10 super chat. The deadline is fast approaching for the age of disclosure. It's always fast approaching, my friend, isn't it? It's always fast approaching, yet it never seems to arrive. Does it? All right. So cool. I'm really happy for New Jersey. They need this, man. After that whole drone invasion thing, all the news on that, of course, they're filming a UFO movie in New Jersey. So have you ever been to New Jersey? Richard says, yeah, all the time. Actually, my really good friend, Nick, who you guys have heard on the podcast in the past, whenever I've done UFO movie review episodes and stuff. Nick's come on a few times. I got a few friends in Jersey, actually. I've been there a ton. I filmed for one of Seth Breedlove's documentaries in New Jersey at one point, where I finally got to meet my former co-host of Into the Fray Radio, Shannon LeGros. We'd been working together for years, but never met. And I finally got to meet her and Seth for the very first time in New Jersey, of all places. So yeah, I mean, I lived in New York City for 13 years. So if you haven't been to New Jersey and you live in New York, you ain't doing something right. You got to go to Jersey, man. Some good stuff there. They get a bad rap sometimes, that Jersey Shore sort of atmosphere and whatnot. But like, no offense, Snooki, if you're listening to this, but like all the cliches of New Jersey. But I love New Jerseyans. They're some of the nicest people I've ever met. And honestly, like if you live in New Jersey, you're basically a New Yorker, and we embrace that wholeheartedly there. So yeah. You should interview Snooki. I'm gonna try. If you're listening, Snooki, would love to have you on the show. All right, guys. What is our next thing we're covering? We're sticking with Hollywood tonight. It is a Hollywood-centric show, I guess. And we're going to be talking about a former Hollywood director named Peter Farrelly. Now, some of you guys may know Mr. Farrelly from his work. He directed the Oscar-nominated Green Book, the movie The Green Book, which I haven't actually seen, but he directed that. He also directed two of my favorite comedies. There's Something About Mary and Dumb and Dumber. So this guy's got quite a track list. He did a few others, a Jim Carrey movie, a couple other Ben Stiller ones. Like he's done a bunch of those sort of comedies and stuff. But he was not joking in this clip I'm going to show you guys here. He was on the talk show called the Kevin Pollak Chat Show. Kevin Pollak is an actor. You guys will probably recognize him when you see this clip. On this chat show, Peter Farrelly actually started talking about an extremely dramatic UFO sighting that he had in 1975, which is, I know, a long time ago, but man, when you hear him in this clip, it sounds like this happened to him just yesterday. So he goes into depth. So get ready. This clip might be a little on the lengthy side, but bear with me. It's definitely worth listening to because this is a very dramatic UFO encounter from one of the Hollywood elites, if you want to call him that, Peter Farrelly. So give this a watch and let me know what you think after we watch it.
On Halloween night 1975, okay, I was a freshman in college, and I went to Providence College. But that night, my buddy and I drove down to the University of Rhode Island to visit friends. And we partied, went to parties, hung out, drank beer, did it all, ended up at a pizza parlor, ate, and then we had to drive home. And we were driving home late. Excuse me. It's probably 3 o'clock in the morning. And we were cruising back, and it was about an hour drive for us. And it was on, we had gotten on off Route 95 onto Route 295, which is more rural, and there were no cars on the road. And I do remember, and we weren't talking, we were just listening to the radio, listening to tunes, cruising along. It's the end of the night, we're done. And we're cruising down this long straightaway where you could see like kind of for about 10 miles. You could see like down for about 5 and up about 5, you know what I'm saying? Like one of those long,
sure.
Yeah. And coming down the road, the highway toward us, over the highway is a light. It appears to be like a plane or a helicopter or something coming down toward us. And I see it, but I'm not thinking anything of it. But cruising along, listening to radio. As it gets bigger, the lights get bigger and bigger. I'm thinking, wow, that's a big helicopter. It's clearly like low, so it's got to be some kind of helicopter type thing. Again, we're not saying a word. It's getting closer and closer. The lights are getting bigger and bigger, and it's not going fast. It's going, taking its time, coming down the highway. And I remember, like, among other things, whatever I'm thinking, listening to radio, this, wow, that's a really big helicopter. Then it gets bigger. I'm thinking, well, that must be like a military helicopter. This is in my head. And it's approaching and approaching. It's big and big, and we haven't said a peep. Just see this, it's kind of like not even paying attention. And all of a sudden, as it's coming upon us, suddenly it's a massive thing. And it is a rectangular shaped craft, I will say, okay? It's rectangular, like, it's hard to say how big it is because you can't tell how high it is, but it seems to be a few hundred yards up, maybe it's 1,000 feet up, I don't know. It's not that high, but it's rectangular shape, and there's zillions of lights under it. And the lights are going back, like sideways, like shoot, back and forth. And then the other ones, no sound, by the way. And the other ones are going this way. Like, so they're kind of crossing each other, all these lights. And then there are a few lights that are doing like a wind, like a fan. They're like going around in a circle, lights, and they're all over the place going. And it is like fucking lighting the goddamn highway up over, as we're going through it, and it's taking its time. I'm telling you, it's right out of Star Wars. You know, when you see the thing come over you and it just keeps going, and we're like, and I'm looking up at like, what the? And I look over at my friend, and my friend looks at me and goes, "The fucking flying sausage!" And I think, ugh. And I remember my legs.
Is that a quote, by the way?
My legs went weak. It was like completely rubbery. Like I remember pushing my foot on the gas. It was an effort. Like I literally lost all the blood in my legs somehow. And my wife has said, "Do you think you guys were, no, I don't think we were. But I'm telling you, my legs went completely numb out of fear, I'm assuming, but I've never had that sensation before, where I was pushing down the gas like, oh my God, let's go. And I took off and we cruised down the highway. And as I'm cruising off, my heart, I'm looking in the rearview mirror and I can see it just heading away down the highway, down Route 295, okay? And I remember the guy had passed us about 10 minutes earlier in a car. So we said, let's find that guy, see if he saw it, because there's not a car on the road. So I drove about 110 miles an hour until we got to our exit, which was another 7 or 8 miles, and never caught up with the guy. And I dropped my buddy off, and then I went home. And I remember on the way home, I was just like terrified. I was looking around, is this thing going to come back for me? Came home, woke my parents up, woke my sister up. I'm like, I just saw a flying saucer, the whole thing. They're like, go to bed. I said, no. Anyway.
How old were you again?
18.
Okay.
So the next morning I get up to go to school, and I always listen to the same radio station every morning. It was an AM station, because I only had an AM radio in my car. And,
back in the 50s.
Yeah. And I'm listening to it, and cruising to school, and a thing comes on, it says, if anybody has reported seeing an unidentified flying object, please call this number. I said, got a pen, wrote it down, got to school, went to a phone booth. Yeah, I saw it last night. Did people see it? They said, no, we're just taking a poll. I said, what? I said, I just saw the thing last night. And you hear this thing? And come on, who saw it? And they said, no, we're just taking a poll. So I was like, what's your name? Where do you live? All this. We'll get back to you if we need to. I said, okay, great. So for the next 2 weeks, everybody I see, I saw a flying saucer. It's a thing. It's a real one, And finally, after a couple weeks, I'm thinking, wait a second, who was that? What was that? Because that number, that thing that came on the radio station, it was the big radio station in Rhode Island, never came back. I listened to it every morning at the same time. They never asked for that again. So I called that number, disconnected.
Sure.
2 weeks later, disconnected number.
We're just taking a poll.
Yeah. So years later, I watched a video. It was called UFOs in America. It's the history of UFOs in America. And they said that the most sightings ever in the U.S. were in the northeastern United States in the fall of '75. That's when I had seen mine. And their theory is that because there were a lot of nuclear power plants being built and nuclear subs at New London, which was only like a half hour from where I was when I saw this thing. They don't know why, but these things seem to be attracted to that. Now, on that day, by the way, like there was a part of me that thought, well, that could be a military thing.
Sure.
I don't know what it is.
They don't want you to know.
Well, it could certainly be like it was just cruising down the highway, and maybe it's some military thing that we don't know about. But it was nothing that I've ever heard about. Now, we're 38 years later, and this thing still doesn't exist, this big rectangular thing.
With no sound.
With no sound that cruises over us. So, I feel confident that it was, it was an unidentified flying object, but whether it was of this planet or whatever, who knows? But I'm just telling you, that's my story.
Well, that's the first and best firsthand experience that I've heard.
Well, I have a lot of people, even having seen this, I'm suspicious of stories. Like people say, I saw one. I said, what did you see? They said, well, I was in the desert and I saw this light that was zigzagging in a way that planes can't zigzag. That's a light. That's not a UFO. Yeah. I had a ship come over my car. Yeah. That's what I saw. And that's the God's honest truth.
Yeah. It sounds like it was also the size of like a battleship. Like it was ridiculous. It was like the length of a football field kind of thing.
But again, it was hard to tell because the perspective, it's at night and it's coming over you and it's long, it's coming slow, and you're looking like, oh my God, what the fuck fuck is going on?
Like it's never going to end.
Yeah, but on the other hand, is that 100 yards up or is that like 3,000 feet? I don't know.
No.
It's hard to tell the perspective, but it's huge and it's clear rectangle. And by the way, that's the thing that bothers me is
we don't have those.
I never hear that one. People are always talking about flying saucers or things, but I've never heard the rectangle.
Yeah.
This was a complete rectangle, a long
We heard the cigar shape.
Yeah.
That comes up every now and then.
Yeah.
But the dining room table.
Yeah. I'm assuming that state police must have seen it because it came right down 295. There was probably some statey out. He picked up on it. And somehow they wanted to know what it was. Who knows who put that number out there?
Yeah.
But I called in the next day, gave all my information, and boom, 2
We're
weeks
just
later.
taking a poll, they said.
Yeah, just taking a poll.
Wow. That is fucking fantastic.
What a story. Okay, so Peter Farrelly needs to be a MUFON investigator, first of all. Like, he's talking like, I wasn't sure the angles and directly above how high up it could have been in relation to the size of what it was, but in the way he described, like, it was just amazing. Amazing. He's very animated. I'm guessing that's alien juice. Yeah. I did put in the chat, is he drinking milk? What the heck is that? Crazy. Rectangular shaped craft. Man, didn't we just hear like a really dramatic military encounter like that over at Vandenberg, I believe it was? Am I wrong on that? Or Eglin, maybe? I don't know. One of the people who like reported to Arrow had a case of a rectangle. I heard it on some show. But yeah, crazy rectangular UFO encounter on Halloween of 1975. Really good case. Man, I gotta try to reach out to him. I'd love to get him on the show. But yeah, what'd you guys think of that encounter? One of the craziest sort of objects I've ever heard. Saying everything from the heart, Haunting Human Studio says. Agreed. Before I forget, guys, shout out to Doug Sprague. I don't know if he's still here. He said he's getting ready for a tornado. That's insane. Please be safe back there in New York. Love you, my man. Please be safe. Don't get whipped up in that thing like Toto. I beg of you. The biologist is here. Hello, my friend. Welcome. Biologist, you've missed a lot, buddy. You're gonna have to watch the archive. We're in Hollywood mode tonight. Yes, please like, subscribe, guys, if you can. Hit that like button. Truly do appreciate that, and it does really help us. Boosts us up in the algorithms and all that good stuff. Leave a comment too, not in the live chat, but the comments below the video. Apparently that really helps get you up in the algorithms too. And share the show across your social media. I don't know. I have the option to share the episode with all of my subscribers here on YouTube. I don't know if you guys have that as well, or if that's just someone who has a channel can do that. I'm not sure, but it sends it out to all of your own YouTube subscribers. If anyone subscribes to your account, you can do that too. Dalen, what's everyone drinking this evening? Good question. For once, I'm not drinking anything of the alcoholic persuasion. I have had a really long day of stuff, guys. So I actually, I'm drinking a Red Bull tonight. Guilty as charged. I hate this stuff, but I needed it. Pat says, forgot to watch your alien movie tier video. No worries, my friend. It is up here in perpetuity. You can watch it anytime you want. And then this Wednesday, Pat, I'll be dropping our Phoenix Lights watch along video as well. All right. So what do we got next? We have a commercial break. So guys, thank you so much, biologist, for the $199 super chat. Better late than never. Exactly, my friend. Exactly. We're going to take a very quick commercial break, and we're going to come back, and I've got 2 more stories for you guys that we're going to cover. And fun night tonight here at Somewhere in the Live Stream. So stick around. We'll be right back. And I'm trying to find the commercial. Where is it? I found it. I'll see you in just a sec. I'm rusty. That's what happens when you miss a week. Greetings, everyone. Ryan Sprague here, host of Somewhere in the Skies. For over 7 years and more than 400 episodes, the Somewhere in the Skies podcast has always been free to listen to, but it's not free to create. So we offer several ways to help support our efforts and get rewards in return. If you listen to the podcast on Apple, you can click the subscribe button at the top of your Somewhere in the Skies feed to become a premium Apple subscriber. Or you can join our Patreon campaign with several tiers available. Both of these options give you the same benefits and rewards: ad-free episodes, early access to the main show, and bonus episodes and content. Help keep the lights on at the Somewhere in the Skies HQ, and help us continue to grow by becoming a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/somewhereskies, or by clicking the subscribe button at the top of your Apple feed. Thank you for your continued support, and keep looking up. Welcome back, everyone, to Somewhere in the Live Stream. And before we go any further, I don't want to be the one to announce this, but I want to wish Suzanne and her husband a huge congratulations. And that's all I'm going to say for now. Incredible news that I just heard about. But that's going to stay between Suzanne and I until she announces it herself. So congratulations to both of you and to your family. All right, there we go. Her son is getting married. Woo! That's awesome. That's awesome. We'll have to live stream the wedding, Suzanne. I'll moderate that episode. You're going to be a little busy. Oh, man. All right, guys. Well, I'm so happy now. I've completely lost my train of thought. Unfortunately, we're going to a pretty sad story off of that incredible news. But do you guys remember, I want to say it was maybe a month or so ago, we covered the story about the former Area 51 workers who were trying to file basically a lawsuit against Area 51 and an appeal to Veteran Affairs to get treatment for basically a bunch of different ailments that they suffered while working certain operations at Area 51. Now, this has been going on for decades and decades and decades. Back in the days of like Bill Clinton and stuff, there was a lot of talk about toxic waste that had been dumped, radioactive materials that had been used at Area 51, and a lot of the employees have been suffering from that. That nothing's changed, and a lot of these employees are still suffering from these things. In fact, a lot of them have died. A lot of them have gotten cancer, and Veteran Affairs is doing nothing about it. The Department of Defense, who basically fund and run Area 51, are doing nothing about it because they're saying that these people never worked there. It's a crazy, sad, vile story. And I will give News Nation credit. Now, say what you want about News Nation. They cover a lot of sensational stuff, especially in the UFO world. They do cover things that I think need to be covered, and this story is one of them. These men and women who have worked at Area 51 have sacrificed a lot for the quote unquote sake of national security and development and things like that. And a lot of them are now suffering the consequences of that service to their country in the form of cancer and a lot of different things. And their own government is turning their back on these people. It just makes me so mad. We covered this in depth, and News Nation has been covering and following up on this story. And they followed up so much that a recent U.S. representative out of California actually is now getting involved with their case. So, this is a gentleman named Mark Takano. He's a representative in California. If you're watching this on YouTube, we have a image up of Mr. Takano. And he recently called on the president and the Department of Defense to assist in aiding Area 51 veterans developing cancer from their work there. And he wants a hearing held on this very issue. So we're getting some traction, guys. I'm going to go ahead and play this clip from News Nation where they interview Mr. Decano about this, and they go much more in depth. Again, clip's a little long, but it's definitely worth it. Give this a watch, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
First, I just want to get your reaction to this News Nation investigation and what these vets are going through.
You know, what I saw was disturbing. I am angered. And, you know, right now, I would say that I would call on the Department of Defense, the Secretary and the President to lift the classification on this period of time. We need to acknowledge that these veterans were serving in an area where they were exposed to toxic radiation and other toxicities. It's long past overdue that we need to do this. But more than that, you know, the VA Secretary has the ability to declare new presumptions. So an answer that there is no presumption is not an adequate answer. As the author of the Honor Our Pact Act, which addressed the toxic exposure of our Iraq, Afghanistan veterans to toxic burn pits, and actually did acknowledge radiation exposure to cohorts of veterans that were involved in the South Pacific and in I think Iceland or Greenland. We have a precedent for establishing new presumptive illnesses.
Yeah, let me ask, let's talk about what can be done to help them, because in the previous Congress, a bill, H.R. 9511, aimed to establish this presumption of exposure for these veterans. It was introduced in September. It never got past the Health Committee. Now that we have a new Congress, what are you committing to do to help these veterans?
Well, I'm committing to requesting from the chairman, my colleague, the Republican chairman, to get a hearing as soon as possible. And call in the relevant witnesses that can expedite this bill. I commend the work of my colleague Susie Lee and Mark Amidei, both a Democrat and Republicans, bipartisan bill that we need to get congressional relief going. But look, congressional relief can happen simultaneously to internal processes that were established through the PACT Act, which was signed into law in 2022 by President Biden. The current secretary has the wherewithal through an internal process to also, on their own, without legislation, get a presumption declared for these veterans. Let me say that I'm very, very concerned that the recent terminations, which we don't have full information about. The secretary is being very, very opaque about this, may include the very researchers who might have been on probationary hiring status that could expedite the internal process to get a presumption declared for this cohort of veterans in Area 51.
That is concerning to hear, and we certainly appreciate any help that you can offer these veterans. You know, that Maine vet, Dave Creed, as we said, just added the 446th name to the memorial list. He says the DOD is just trying to wait them out at this point until there's none of them left. As the ranking member of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, what would you say to these veterans?
I would say keep fighting, keep hanging in there. I am just very upset that you're having to fight your own government. So I stand as your ally in getting this information, the circumstances around your exposure declassified, and that I will push legislatively. I will push the secretary to make sure that he has the personnel to get this done. To make sure that we have the researchers that can get the process going internally to get a presumptive declaration for your exposures. You deserve full disability benefits for you and your families. and you deserve access to healthcare.
Congressman, I truly appreciate that, and I appreciate your time. I know we'll be following up with you, and I know time is of the essence here. I can tell you, since I met with these veterans out there in the desert, more than 60 of them have joined that memorial list.
60 have joined the memorial list. That's insane. And the fact that they said, like, they're just going to wait it out until all these guys die off, that is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And I'm going to be honest, guys, like, I don't give a shit about UFOs when it comes to this story at Area 51. Like, these are employees, workers, people who were trying to do the right thing for their country, no matter what they were working on at Area 51. Whether it was a sports model flying saucer or it was something else. I don't mean to laugh. If I don't laugh, I'm going to fucking cry. Excuse me, I apologize. This story just really gets to me for some reason. You know what I think it is? Like, we had Chris Bartell on the show, and he worked at Nellis, he worked at Area 51, he worked at Skinwalker Ranch. The dude's been around, basically, when it comes to working security at these highly sensitive areas. And he was basically spearheading an effort to figure out why he and his fellow employees at Skinwalker Ranch were being used as guinea pigs, in these experiments and things going on. Things going on there. It just, and Chris was trying to do the right thing, and he got really shaken up and emotional in the interview I did with him. And I just hate that. I hate that. I hate knowing that, like, the government is going to wait it out until these guys are all gone so that no one else complains. But hey, look, if the stuff that's been going on at Area 51 is still going on, that's a whole new generation of possible individuals who will contract certain illnesses and ailments and radiation and cancer and stuff going on there. So yeah. Bravo to Representative Mark Takano for getting this going, and hopefully we'll get a hearing on it. And look, I'd rather have this hearing happen than another damn UFO one where nothing happens. So, yeah. Enough about that. Let's get to our last story of tonight, guys. And this is a quick one tonight. I got to let Susanna and her husband go and congratulate their son and talk to him. But we've got one more story for you guys, and that is from none other than, where is it? There it is. Good old Jacques Vallee. Had him on the show about a month ago. Awesome talking to him as always. He just came out with his Forbidden Science final installment. I think it was Forbidden Science 6, Scattered Castles, and we talked all about that. Talked about a crazy, like almost out of body or close encounter thing that happened to him that he's never really talked about before, except in his new book, and crazy stuff. But he recently was on Joe Rogan and brought Joe a little gift, as it were. Headline here: Jacques Vallee gives Joe Rogan a piece of a UFO. What? That's quite a gift to give your host. Crazy stuff. So on a recent episode of Joe Rogan podcast, Jacques Vallee brought up a UFO case he investigated from 1977 in Omaha, Nebraska, where a UFO dropped half a ton of some sort of molten metal. Samples were analyzed by Gary Nolan and didn't show evidence of special change of isotopic ratios. But this thing is anomalous, according to Jacques Vallee. So, let's give this clip a watch from Joe Rogan. I usually wouldn't do this because I'm not a huge fan of Rogan. I'm sure many of you here aren't as well. Some of you might be, and all the power to you, I guess. But Jacques was on Joe Rogan, talking about his new book, talking about this case, and we're gonna watch this clip and see him give Joe Rogan a piece of UFO slag, as it were. So I've been saying "as it were" a lot tonight. Sorry, guys. Apparently, that's my thing for tonight. There's a there. Let's watch this.
Can I tell you
Sure.
about it?
What'd you bring?
So this is something that the case was so interesting that Dr. Nolan and I and a couple of friends wrote it up and published it in the prime astronautics review in the world. Okay, it's so after it took a couple of years for them to agree to look at it and so on, to look at the analysis. This happened in a suburb of Omaha, Nebraska, but on the Iowa side. There is this town, a suburb with a park. This is about a week before Christmas in 1977. Okay, people are there having a good time in the park in the evening. It's getting it's getting dark and I want to make sure they see something in the sky that looks like one of those boxes there. It looks like a round box with lights around it, and the lights are going around, sort of, and it's pretty high, and it's flying over the town. And then a mass of steel, liquid steel, falls in the park. It falls on a levee in the park. There is about half a ton of it, liquid, glowing. It has no business being there. So you have this mass of metal. Obviously, they call the
glowing. You say it's molten.
Yes,
so it's liquid,
the weather
hot.
is freezing. We know the temperature and everything else. It's freezing. The grass is on fire around it. They call the firemen call the police gets there, and the firemen get there. They stop the fire. The fire is, would have died by itself. There's no problem there. They take pictures of the thing glowing. I have the pictures, infrared, Polaroid pictures of the thing glowing in the grass, burning. Liquid. And it's going to stay liquid for a couple of hours, and it cools down gradually. And then people take pieces of it as souvenirs. So I have the pieces of it, and there they are. Now, there was analysis done by 2 labs. Obviously, the question is, where did that come from? There is chromium, titanium, and iron, which you can find in ordinary steel, but this isn't really, the composition isn't exactly what you'd expect industrial steel to be. So one of the chemical analyses is done at the lab, for industrial steel. The investigators call the company. The company says, yes, we make steel. So we have furnaces, but we empty the furnaces. This is over a weekend. The factory is closed. There would be nobody there, and certainly no liquid steel in our factory
so
on that day.
Half a ton of it.
They have, yeah.
This is a half a ton that they found sitting there.
So then they call the Strategic Air Command, because B-52s fly over that town. B-52 is a big thing, and the people saw something in the sky. So maybe it was. the Air Force, politely laughs at them and says, we carry atom bombs, but we don't carry furnaces with molten steel. Okay, so go look somewhere else. And they say, good luck. By the way, this is a way you could test it. This is for you, by the way.
Oh,
this
thank
is
you.
for your special collection of
All right.
weird
Good
things.
stuff. Yeah.
But this is, essentially, it's steel. There we go.
So that's the area where
the mass of steel glowing.
And so this steel you can make on Earth. This is
Yes.
It's a composite of bunch of different materials.
Yeah. It's not exactly the steel that you would use in construction or but it is essentially steel. And so I gave my samples to to Stanford so that we could redo the analysis, and not the chemical analysis, but the isotope analysis. So Dr. Nolan and I took it to the lab. Dr. Nolan had 2 series of instruments that could do the analysis. We did both, and we confirmed essentially this. So there was no special change in the isotope ratios. If there was, that would indicate that somebody had manipulated the isotopes, which is not a hoax. Then you know for sure it's not a hoax, because
Right.
that's high caliber scientific laboratory work, and you need special instrument experts to interpret it.
Interesting. Rogan didn't seem too impressed with getting that UFO slag gifted to him, I'll tell you that much. But the guy seems to be growing very, very skeptical of the UFO topic, and that's fine. That's fair, as he should. But this was an interesting case, one I wasn't too familiar with. And hey, I'm all for getting these things tested. So interesting. I look forward to any further, developments in the outcome of those tests. I asked Michael Huntington, who's going to be going to this area. He said, "I'll be in that part of Iowa in September." Interesting. This reminds me, this molten droppings, from a UFO reminds me so much of the Maury Island UFO event, where we basically got the beginnings of the Men in Black folklore, as it were. My term for tonight. And yeah, so this kind of reminded me of that. Like, what are these metallic, liquidy, molten droppings that these UFOs seem to be dropping down onto our Earth? I don't know. Joseph, hello, welcome to Joseph. They say Julie Olson, who was part of a 1982 Willerny, Minnesota close encounter case, along with her mother, there was melted holes in the snow and debris left, which was photographed at the time. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. I'll definitely have to look into that. That's pretty interesting. I'm going to have to look into more cases, see if there's enough to make an episode out of that, because I'd really be interested. What is this like liquid metal being dropped from UFOs? I don't know. Crazy stuff. Wow, even with the stream dropping, we're up to 480 people watching, which is incredible. Thank you, guys. Thanks for sticking around. I'm glad the stream came back. I'll have to do some investigating on what happened. I checked. We didn't get a copyright warning or anything, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened. But yeah, interesting case. Good to see Mr. Vallee out there, talking about his new book and all that. So yeah. YouTube's gonna give me a heart attack, Suzanne says. Yeah, interesting stuff. And I have some interesting stuff for you guys. So that's it for news stories tonight. If you have any last questions or comments you want to put in here, now would be the time. Throw them in the super chat or put them in capital letters, and I'll try to get to them as we wrap things up here. But premiering in just a little while, we have the 400th episode of the Somewhere in the Skies podcast. Now, we did live stream this a little while back, so if you did watch it, this will sound very familiar. But we did live stream it because it was going to be the recording of our 400th episode, and that is a panel discussion with Rob Christofferson, Jason McClellan, and Steve Berg. This was so much fun, guys. We talked all about UFOs, past, present, and future, where the topic's been, where it is now, and where we hope it's heading in the future. A lot has changed, and we all sort of give our thoughts and opinions on where we think ufology is in 2025, what we hope comes back, and what we hope for in the future. It was a lot of fun. So be on the lookout for that in just a couple hours. Be sure you're subscribed to the podcast. That's the easiest way. You'll get notified when the episode drops. Like I said, we are going to be dropping my watch along of the Phoenix Lights, my investigation into the Phoenix Lights through the television series Mysteries Decoded. That watch along will drop for you on Wednesday. But if you want more content like that watch along, the best place to go is over to Patreon, where we do things like that. We're going to be doing more in the future. You get bonus content, you get early access to the podcast, priority to ask our guests questions, and everything in between. You can find a link to our Patreon in the show notes, or it's right there up on the screen right now. Thank you, Suzanne. Patreon.com/somewhere skies. But before we go, I remembered for the very first time ever, our poll. I put a poll up on YouTube. And this circles back to our first story about Dan Farah and the documentary, The Age of Disclosure, that just premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival. I always get that confused. And if you guys are going to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh the poll and see what happens. And get the results from you guys. Here we go. I asked, will you be seeing the Age of Disclosure documentary when it becomes available? And out of 82 votes, 61% of you said yes, 7% said no, 15% said undecided, and 17% said no idea what that is. Wow. So more of you have no idea what the documentary is than opposed to undecided. That's interesting. But a resounding 61% of you will be seeing it. 7% absolutely not. I'm probably going to watch it just to see what was said by the 34. They're touting 34 witnesses and people who came forward to talk in it. Apparently it's like 2 hours of talking heads. So just be prepared for that. Not any exciting UFO footage or anything like that. But hey, sometimes it's not about that. It's about the content and the discussions and the things being said. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see where it drops. Is it going to be on streaming? Is it going to be on like an HBO situation or something like that? I don't know. I don't even know if they know at this point. The last article I looked at said they're still looking for distribution, which is weird because Dan Farah is like a pretty well connected guy in Hollywood, works with Steven Spielberg. Like you would think they already had a deal signed for some sort of distribution. So that's a little strange and odd to me. Again, the reviews have been very mixed on the documentary itself. So I don't know. But all that being said, give it a watch when it comes out and we'll have a discussion about it. Hello to Juan Manuel the Fifth. Good to see you here. Robert says, hit that like button. Yes, guys, hit that like button on the way out. Would truly appreciate that. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And the last thing I will ask from you guys, I promise, head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and rate and review the podcast. Now, these live streams do drop on the podcast main feed every Wednesday, so you can listen to this as well in the future over there. But if you could do me a big favor, and help us get up in the algorithms over there on Apple and Spotify, the 2 largest podcast platforms out there. Yeah, just leave a rating and review. I would truly appreciate that. I shall rate the spotty. Thank you, Dalen. Appreciate that. I once again do want to give a shout out to Angel, to James, and to the biologist for the super chats. Oh my God, I didn't see this comment. Suzette says, being here is the best thing I've done since kicking my boyfriend out. Wow. I don't know. I honestly don't know what to say to that. What did he do? What did he do to get kicked? I don't want to know. That is between you and baby Jesus. All right, guys, that is going to do it for tonight. It was a quick one tonight. You know, Suzanne's got to go. They have to go celebrate. So I want to thank her for being here on her travels. She's literally in a car. I can see her and her husband driving, and she still made it happen. It's crazy, the dedication she has shown to this. And I cannot thank her enough for all she does. Maybe we'll get her on next week when she's back in a in a place with 4 walls and Wi-Fi. She's literally coming to us from a hotspot in her car. Crazy stuff. But I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. The regulars are new people. Thank you over on Twitch, over on Discord, over on Patreon, YouTube members, Twitter, wherever you're watching. Truly do appreciate every single person who stops by to watch this. So yeah, guys, be on the lookout for the brand new episode of the podcast dropping very soon. And that's going to do it. Hopefully we'll have a live stream next week. We'll see. I'm heading to Nova Scotia very soon for another season of, actually, I should say a brand new season of a brand new show I'm going to be hosting called Haunted Heart and Soul, where we are continuing our paranormal investigations there in Nova Scotia. So yeah, I'll have more news on that in the very near future. But yeah, time to get ready for some ghosties. So yeah, that's going to do it, guys. Thank you again for joining me. Rate, review, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I will hopefully see you next week. And I will leave you with our mantra, as always. And that is, keep your feet on the ground, but never stop searching somewhere in the skies. Good night.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.